So are schools going to fight with the athletes in arbitration cases, or are they going to be against the athlete? And I think the answer to that is going to be it depends.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Odd Coaches Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Keith Adams, and on today's Throwdown Thursday edition, we're going to introduce formally what NIL Go is. We're going to talk about which sports will be a part of revenue sharing for many of your power conferences. And is this the beginning of the end of the transfer portal? So because we're doing high-level discussion, I have my administrator with us here, Robert Abney. Robert, are we ready to go about NIL Go?
Well, I'm going to say that since nobody really knows what this is supposed to be yet anyway, I think we probably qualify as experts as much as anybody else.
Yes, and we have studied all of this since the beginning, so let's get to it. What is NIL Go? Well, first we want to shout out friend of the show, Ross Delinger of Yahoo Sports. He's a great follow on social media. And the unofficial goal of NIL Go is to prevent booster payments to athletes that for years now has been masquerading as commercial and endorsement deals. So the group is called Deloitte, and the new enforcement entity of the College Sports Commission. They plan to prevent booster pay, which has been the target of criticism and fascination. So here are the particulars, Robert. This is a 6-step process, and many doubt that the clearinghouse will withstand the legal challenges. The administrators have done something notable, though, and they think this is going to prevent a lot of legal issues. NCAA Charlie Baker says that the clearinghouse appeals process, the arbitration is equipped with subpoena power. So officials at power conferences confirmed that significant subpoena power exists under the arbitration appeals process, but those powers are less expansive than subpoenas within a courtroom. The decision to use subpoena power and exactly how to use it is expected to rest with the arbitrator presiding over the case. A subpoena compels individuals or entities to produce evidence under the penalty of law, such as turning over text messages, emails, and phone call laws, as well as testifying before the investigators. Remember, Jim Harbaugh didn't want to do that in his Michigan situation. It is one of the most important tools that law officers, such as police investigators, use, and this was never available to the NCAA. So, Robert, when you hear subpoena powers, what are your initial thoughts before we even talk about the process?
You know, when I hear we hear Congress, give out subpoenas to people all the time. And there's no real penalty for not showing up. If you're subpoenaed to a court of law, and you don't show up, you can be held in contempt of court. What is the College Sports Commission? What is that? What is the hammer if you fail to obey the subpoena? I guess that's the first question I have. Okay, so you can subpoena people, but then what?
Well, we may find that out because now we're going to go through the process. So fans, we gave you the initial thoughts and the ideas of it. So now here's the process of NIL Go. Athletes are required to submit third-party NIL deals of $600 or more using a web-based submission system, not unlike registering for a passport or something. The clearinghouse makes 3 determinations once a deal is submitted. 1, is the third party an associated entity with the university, such as a booster or a business connected with the school? If so, more scrutiny is applied. Second thing, is the deal for a valid business purpose? The third party business, brand, or individual must be receiving true value from the activity, such as an autograph session, commercial, speaking engagement. And 3, is the deal within Deloitte's range of compensation paid to similarly situated individuals? This is perhaps the most scrutinized of the concepts. Deloitte created the range of compensation through an algorithm using fair market value analysis, comparing other deals. Some additional information for you, Robert, before you respond. Clemson's athletic director, Graham Neff, is one of the implementation committee members, and he details the factors used to form compensation range. If you're at Georgia Tech, your reach going to be larger than if you're at Georgia State. So that's one of the ways that they're going to look at it. Third party NIL compensation that passes the clearinghouse does not count against the cap. So, with that being said, we're giving you a little more information. Any expanded thoughts based on that?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, these big, like where I think we're going to talk a little bit more about Texas Tech later on, but these big collectives like the collective at Texas Tech that has all this money, and Texas has one, and Texas A&M has one, and so on, and all of these big schools, those collectives. It sounds like those deals are okay because they are associated companies. Am I tracking that properly?
Well, let's find out because the denial, approval, and arbitration stage is here upon us. Step 6 lays out the process for a player if his or her deal is denied by the clearinghouse because it's either not struck for valid business purposes or it does not meet the compensation range. So first, they get an opportunity to revise and submit the deal so that the compensation falls within the algorithm's range. For example, if the clearinghouse deems that a submitted $1 million deal should be $500,000, the athlete can resubmit for $500,000, and the school, if it so chooses, can compensate the athlete for the other $500,000. 2, they can cancel the deal completely. 3, they can request arbitration as an appeals process. 4, they can accept the rejected deal as is. In this case, the athlete may face enforcement consequences such as the loss of eligibility. So does that help answer your question?
I think so. um, so it sounds like some of these NIL, I mean, some of these okay, I mean, it's easy. Let's take Arch Manning. Okay, Arch Manning is getting $5 million from the Texas collective. I don't remember what they're called. So he would have to. This deal would be submitted through NIL Go, and NIL Go says, no, Arch, you're only worth $2.5 million. At which point they can say, okay, we'll take that. Or they can resubmit it. I suppose you resubmit with documentation saying, here's why it's worth $4 million, right? And then the arbitrator can rule one way or the other, and say the arbitrator goes, no, $2.5 million sounds right. Or maybe I suspect with the arbitrator, there will be a lot of, right in the middle. No, Arch, 4 million's too much. 2.5 isn't enough. We'll go 3.25 million. So that's right in the middle, right? Or they can just say, well, we're going to give Arch his $4 million and he's going to the NFL anyway. So have at it. You think I got that right?
I think you got it right because an arbitrator's rules may depend on what evidence each side produces, and they've noted that evidence may now be generated through limited subpoena power. But a couple of questions remain. Will an athlete school fight alongside the athlete if there's an issue, or will they leave them to their own devices? And let's talk penalties, Robert. Implementation committee members say they are finalizing a menu of penalties for those found to commit violations within the new revenue sharing era. most notably those found to have circumvented the cap with old-fashioned cheating or intentional or accidental miscalculations, tampering with another college student athlete or prospect who was under contract. Uh, Officials also decided against using a set penalty matrix. Smart move, people. Like the NCAA currently does, level one, level two. Instead, they are providing the new College Sports Commission CEO, Brian Seeley, with the flexibility to choose penalties from a wide range of options depending on the individual circumstance. Those penalties are being worked through, are going to be significant, and they're going to be different than any penalties we've had before. But, Robert, you're an admin. When you hear this, as we've walked through NIL Go, what are your thoughts on their approach compared to the previous approach?
Well, I think the first thing that's interesting that you talked about was, so are schools going to fight with the athletes in arbitration cases, or are they going to be against the athlete? And I think the answer to that is going to be it depends.
I agree. I agree.
I think it's going to be that depends. And you have situations where athletes make choices of schools based upon their reputation in those arbitration cases. Yeah, they'll have your back. No, they won't. As far as the penalties, and I think you know this as a school person, when you have a discipline matrix, like for kids who have issues, those are really helpful when you have people who are new administrators or are in new situations, because then it's really easy to say, well, parents come in and they're like, we don't like that. Well, that's what the matrix says. So I agree that, I mean, once you get once you get a little bit of time under your belt, once you're the old guy on the bench, like you and me, you understand situations better, and that flexibility is very helpful. And you actually want that because you're better at understanding nuance. We don't have that here. And I agree that you don't want hello. Yeah. This is my granddaughter Camila. She decided she wanted to say hello. Okay. You gotta go, okay?
I like the range. I'm the administrator who says, give me my levels and let's take a disruptive behavior.
Yes.
Sure. Well, is this something that the teacher can deal with, or is this something that needs the assistance of student support or counseling? Because you don't need to always go to admin. So
Right.
if they can create, hey, we're just talking a difference of, even if it's the $1 million and we think it's 500,000, well, share why you think it's 1 million. I don't need to get involved in that. Let that go through the process. And then if you need me, call me. But most of the time, if you've done this right, you're not going to need to call anybody. We can take care of this ourselves. We've got the structure, which CKA always talks about. That's just the boundaries, the rules of engagement. Right. Discipline is the accountability. How are we going to measure and monitor this? And then support. How are we going to help go through this process? And this can be conversation over confrontation.
And that's going to be a challenge because they're starting from nothing.
Nothing.
They have no idea what they're working with. They have no idea what this is going to look like. Even though they're saying, you're setting up this structure, that's great. They have no idea what this is going to look like. Yeah. So I would suspect that, assuming it, survives court challenges, that we will see over the first 3 to 5 years, we'll see significant revisions and reworkings of this whole process, including this penalty, not matrix, but including the penalties and how that works.
Yeah. All right. So this was good. In segment two, we're going to talk about revenue generating sports and how the power conferences are setting this up. We'll see what their thoughts are. We'll be right back on the Eye Coaches Podcast. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Keith Adams, and for years, I've witnessed the struggles student athletes face on how to truly balance the demands of academics and athletics. It's a question that I have dedicated my life to answering. That's why I wrote Finding the Balance, my personal journey to academic and athletic success. It's more than just a book. It is my personal journey, and it is filled with hard-earned lessons from decades as a coach, educator, and now president of the CKA Safe Project. Inside, you will find practical advice, real-life stories, and a clear roadmap to help student athletes, coaches, and parents navigate the complex world of balancing sports and education. And now I am thrilled to bring this message to a wider audience as a proud member of the Cascade Sports Network. We're partnering to amplify these crucial conversations about student athlete success. I believe every student athlete deserves the opportunity to reach their full potential, both on and off the court and the field. You can purchase your copy directly from our website at www.ckasafeproject.org. Join me and the Cascade Sports Network as we work together to help every student athlete succeed. Welcome back to the Odd Coaches Podcast in segment two. Which sports will be a part of the revenue share? So I want to start off with Ohio State. Ohio State's athletic director, Ross Bork, has outlined his vision. And according to media reports, Bork said that the Ohio State Buckeyes will use revenue share for 4 sports. Those sports will be, wait for it, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and women's volleyball, with the hopes to expand to other sports down the road. And that's pretty close to what sports others are doing across the country. Oklahoma's athletic director, Joe Castiglione, said 6 sports will be a part of the program's revenue share: football, men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball, and women's gymnastics. We also have schools talking about planning full payouts. Alabama confirmed that the Crimson Tide will be fully funding revenue sharing while also offering new scholarships and continuing efforts around NIL opportunities, but they did not specify how much money will be allocated to each sport. Colorado, who has got an influx of new money due to Coach Prime, tends to fully meet the $20.5 million responsibility and specified that each of the school's athletic programs will have a revenue share budget that is proportional to the revenue that the sports generates. Before the settlement was finalized, Texas and Texas Tech were among the schools to reveal that they expect to split up revenue sharing dollars. They are following what is expected to be the common model, which is 75% going to football, 15% going to men's basketball, 5% going to women's basketball, and the other 5% going to the other sports as well. Other Power Four athletic directors have issued not committing $20.5 million in revenue sharing. The American Athletic Conference is requiring schools to share at least $10 million of athletic revenue share with the athletes over the next 3 years. The Big 12, there's no set standard for the Big 12. Robert, when you hear this and you know how new everything is, and you know everything's changing as we live, what are your thoughts on how the schools are allocating their revenue and resources?
Well, I think we all expected that the vast majority of that 20.5 or whatever it's going to be, the vast majority of that was going to go to football. And we all knew that. It makes sense in a lot of ways because you've got the most athletes there, that generates the most money. It makes sense. Men's basketball stands to reason that they're going to be considered. And you heard something interesting, like from from Ohio State versus Oklahoma. Ohio State is deciding they're going to put money into women's volleyball. Okay, well, obviously that's a revenue generating program for them. Oklahoma is putting money into, notably, women's softball. Well, they just came off winning 4 consecutive national championships. So schools are going to, prioritize depending upon what they do. I think we talked about this a little bit last week. Coastal Carolina is currently in the Men's College Baseball World Series, and they have won a national championship before. They have other programs, but they play in the Sun Belt. I can't remember. I think Big South. I can't remember.
I was thinking Big South off the top, but you keep going and I'll
South.
figure that out.
Yeah, I can't remember. But, so they have those other sports, but if they're going to compete on a national stage, well, baseball already has a national presence. Stands to reason that program is going to get a pretty large percentage of what they have in their pool. Let's also remember, and we're going to talk more about them in segment 3, but Texas Tech women's softball, national runner-up. They just had 4 transfers come in, all of them with All-American credentials. Sounds like they're going for that next step, right? Well, sounds like they're going to be putting some of that revenue share money into women's softball.
Yes, and it is the Sun Belt for the Chanticleers.
Okay.
It is the Sun Belt. Good. So as we close this segment, this is when we have that conversation of, I can't overly worry about what my neighbor is doing. I have to do what's best for my team and my conference. And that's where we're going to have differing priorities. And but we're all trying to play under the same rules. So this ought to be very interesting watching that, because as somebody who's been in the school systems, you make these blanket policies, but my school, that doesn't do anything for us, and that's going to actually hurt us. So how can we figure these types of things out? So it's going to be an interesting conversation. And in segment 3, we're going to talk theory into practice. And yes, the Texas Tech situation is coming up. Let's see how all of this really works now that the rules of engagement have been set. We're going to talk implementation. We'll be right back on the iCoach podcast. Hi, everyone. Dr. Keith Adams here. And for over 30 years, I've dedicated my life to helping student athletes succeed, not just on the fields and the courts, but in the classroom and beyond. And that's why I founded the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project understands that finding the balance between academics and athletics is crucial for long-term success. That's why the CKA Save Project offers a range of programs, including personalized consulting, mentorship, and coming in 2027, our innovative Gap Year Basketball Academy, designed to assist both young men and women reach their full potential, both on and off the court. I'm incredibly excited to announce that the CKA Save Project is now partnering with the Cascade Sports Network. This partnership will allow us the opportunity to amplify our message and reach even more student athletes through the Odd Coaches podcast and other exciting initiatives. Join the CKA Save Project and the Cascade Sports Network as we empower the next generation of student athletes. Visit CKA on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org to learn more. Let's work together to find the balance and help unlock your potential. All right, welcome back to the iCoaches podcast. It's segment 3. We're going to talk theory into practice. So, ESPN basketball analyst Jay Billis predicts that the House settlement will end transfers, explaining that the biggest thing is now schools can sign players to contracts, which we always pause because I don't recall the collective bargaining meeting and the representation on both sides. But I understand what Jay Billis is saying. When you
Mhm.
sign a player to a multi-year contract with this $20.5 million annual budget, this is going to keep going up because revenues are not going down in college sports. They're going to go up. And please stop telling me about the Olympic movement because no one cares. That's your problem. That's not mine. I'm not the USOC. Let the USOC worry about the USOC. I'm worried about insert school life. And if it works out, great. But that was just an unintended, benefit that you got from, not having to fund an
And
Olympic
and it
development.
and it's a good point that he makes. Why we're not, do we have coaches taking discounts so we can win gold medals? You
No
know,
discounts.
do we have facilities that aren't being built because we want to build more medals? Neither of those things are happening. So why should the players have to take a discount?
Yeah, stop with the discount stuff. Okay. All right. So now we're here, Robert, and I'm so glad you are on with us. The spirit of the rule. Yeah. Texas Tech softball is coming off a national runner up finish and has been thrust into the national spotlight due to multimillionaire pitcher Najari Canaday. Did I say it right?
I think it's Kennedy, but yeah,
All right.
yes.
So here's what Texas Tech did for Keith Adams. I watched. I watched and in the group chat because our guys love baseball and softball, and baseball has never been nice to me, but she put my butt in the seat. So that's what we're talking about. And I'm your average Joe fan. So all the attention garnered during the Red Raiders' historic postseason run has turned college softball upside down with the announcement of several highly touted transfers. So NCAA rules prevent head coaches from recruiting players actively on opponent rosters, but Robert, there aren't any rules in place to prevent a third party from approaching those players. The
Right.
loophole has opened the doors for a bunch of All Americans to join the Texas Tech program and the Matador Club, the Name, Image, and Likeness Collective, and a travel organization based out of Texas, have been heavily involved. Now, this is not new, but is probably new to softball. Robert, as our Texas guy, any thoughts on what Texas Tech is doing and any reactions?
Well, so first of all, Texas Tech has always kind of been like a little brother because the big dogs are Texas and Texas A&M, and everybody else is kind of fighting for recognition after that. But it is by far the largest university out in West Texas, and there's some oil money there, and that's where the Matador Club comes from. It's oil money, and they've decided that they're with the NIL thing, they decided they were going to start going for it. And what they did is they took advantage of the system as it was currently constructed. The coach of the team, and I'm assuming probably no coaches in the program actually reached out to these players with all-American resumes to transfer to Texas Tech. But you've got all these other people, like you've got a travel coach. Well, these big travel organizations travel around the country, and they all know each other. All these coaches know each other, and you better believe all of the big shot NCAA coaches know all these travel coaches. So people talk. And clearly the Matador Club and this travel guy said, we're gonna get some player. We won a national championship in Lubbock. We're gonna get some players. And they took it upon themselves. And I'm sure there were conversations with the coaching staff. We know that. But they took it upon themselves to say, okay, we're gonna get some kids, because we want that national championship. And so that's what they did. And is it shady? Yes. Is it within the rules? Also, yes. That's how the game is played right now.
Yeah. So for me, as a young coach in the business, there's a couple of lessons that I learned. One, you have to know the rules to break them. You have to know the rules to break them. And please don't ever tell me about the spirit of the rule. Tell me what the rule is, because there's your gray area. So there's some things as a coach I wouldn't do, but the coach next to me absolutely would do it. And my players would say, so and so's doing this. Why can't we do that? They're doing it. It's not how we do business. So there's no right or wrong, there's a preferred way. And my mentors said, you've got too much going on good for you to do what that guy can get away with. So, yeah, don't tell me about fair. I don't want to hear about fair. This is the business, as we often say, and you ain't too far gone to understand that. So Texas Tech wants a national championship, and they got spit and shoelace. They had a second pitcher, they'd have got one, but they ran that girl into the ground.
Yeah, no, they needed a second pitcher. They got one. I think it was UCLA's pitcher, and they beat UCLA in the College World Series, right?
Wow.
They needed another bat. They got one. They needed a middle infielder. They got one. I mean, they went out and
They went shopping.
Yep,
They went
exactly.
shopping. All right. So this has been good. So as we wrap up this week and part of next week, you'll have the opportunity to support a wonderful organization, CKA Safe Project and the Odd Coaches Podcast, by buying merch. Good friend Robert has the OCP shirt on, and I have one of our CKA shirts on. Everything you purchase benefits us, goes right back to it. A lot of initiatives we have going on. So, super producer Kelly will put the link on the screen so you can catch that. And if you follow us on social media at CKA Save Project and at Odd Coaches, you can also click our links. So, on behalf of our favorite administrator, Robert Abney, I'm Dr. Keith Adams saying thank you for listening and/or watching the Odd Coaches Podcast, also seen on the Cascade Sports Network. And we will see you on the sidelines. Until next time, take care.
The Odd Coaches Podcast is sponsored by the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project is an industry leader in providing student-athlete academic and athletic support. From assessing student-athletes' academic and athletic skills, to measuring and monitoring student-athlete academic progress, to improving student-athlete time management and organizational skills, the CKA Save Project provides wraparound services for student-athletes from middle school through college. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by emailing cka@ckasaveproject.org. We hope you enjoyed today's show. The Odd Coaches Podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the Odd Coaches Podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the Odd Coaches Podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Odd Coaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach Franchize. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the Odd Coaches Podcast.